Hello. Hi guys, welcome back to Wild Willie's book reviews. Today I'm with Andrea Miller, the author of my first Canadian book of birds and a bunch of other books. I have this book with me today. And yeah, so if you just want to say a little bit about yourself and
Sure. Well, in addition to my first book of Canadian birds, which is published by Nimbus, I also wrote The Day the Buddha Woke Up, a board book about the life of the Buddha and his teachings. And I've written another book for Potter's Field Press, which is Awakening My Heart, and it's about it's articles and interviews and essays on the Buddhist life. I'm an editor at Lions Roar magazine, which is put together here in Halifax. And I have two kids. I have a 5-year-old and I have a 4-year-old.
so I noticed this is the first book I read, but I also read When the Buddha Woke Up, which is also a really good book. So can you just explain how you got started writing and what made you want to start writing?
Well, I started really writing when I was younger than you. I remember writing I started writing a story when I was in elementary school. Maybe I was in grade 3 or something. And I aspired to write a novel for grown-ups about Bigfoot. It didn't go anywhere. I didn't manage to finish, unfortunately. But then in about grade 5, so I was about your age, I remember being in the school library during recess and lunchtime, and whenever I could find a chance with a friend of mine, and we would write really melodramatic poetry about things like shipwrecks. So those were my early days of writing. But I think really it was like so many writers, I think I started writing because I love reading so much. I remember reading books when I was in elementary school and thinking, if I were a writer, I'd like to write like this. I really love beautiful sentences, even in elementary school.
When you started writing, when you were young, did you ever think that you would go anywhere with writing, or did you think it might have just been like a pastime?
I dreamed about being a writer when I was in elementary school, for sure. That was definitely on my mind. But I know that I think when I was in elementary school, maybe it was hard for me to really imagine being a grown-up in any sort of real way. I don't know if you can relate that, but
Yeah, so I was reading your first book of Canadian birds, and I really enjoyed how you give an example of what the birds do. Is there anything that inspired you to write this book, or was it just you had like something that you had to do and you just decided to write a book?
I guess I would say I really like birds myself. I've always really liked birds. And then I had a daughter, I had a little girl, and it turns out that she really liked birds too. And so I was really inspired by her. She was, one of her first words was actually bird. And I couldn't believe that she was saying bird. It sounded quite a lot like bird. And she seemed to be pointing to a bird, but I thought, I'm imagining this. It can't be the case. But then soon she ended up saying the word owl too. She said that soon afterwards. So I was like, okay, I guess she really is saying these words. So it was really seeing that kids can be really interested in birds that made me want to write this book.
So would you say that, especially with this book, that it was kind of your daughter that inspired you, and you just wrote this book to teach other kids about them, or yeah?
Yeah, something like that. And I was actually really delighted because, as the author, I didn't do the illustrations. That was Angela Doak. But I was really happy because after I had my daughter, I actually had another child. I had my little boy, my son. And I was really delighted when Angela did these illustrations because my son had a little raincoat that looked like that. So I always imagine my little boy when I look at this page.
And I really liked how you started out with it just like, look, there's a bird, and then you kind of explain all the different birds, and then in the end I like how you like ask the question, which bird do you like the most? So it kind of gives like readers like the option, and then like they can, especially if they're doing like reviews or whatever, it kind of gives them something to add on to say, this is my favorite bird and like why, based off of your book. So I think that's something you've done really well, especially with this book, to like leave it on a cliffhanger.
Thank you. What's your favorite bird?
I think my favorite bird might be the ruby-throated hummingbird, because we get a bunch around our house and it's just cool to watch them like hover, basically like a helicopter, as you said in your book, and it's just really cool to like watch them and stuff like that.
I actually have exactly the same favorite bird. They really remind me of when I was a kid, and I used to watch the ruby-throated hummingbirds outside my grandmother's window. So I have a really good memory of them. They look like jewels.
So is there anything you want to like say about to anybody that's trying to become an author, like any help or anything that writing books has like maybe some experience or just help tips for like other authors that want to become authors?
Well, I think reading widely is very important, but I also think it's important to have some thick skin, because it's unlikely that you will reach immediate success with your writing. So you have to be able to withstand some rejection, basically. And yeah, that would be the main thing.
Cool. So I noticed with the my first book of Canadian birds, like I said, I liked how you really like did examples. Was that um was that like you were reading this book to your kids as like this is what they do to try and get them to learn, or was this just like a basically after they already knew about birds and you just saw that they really liked them and you liked them too?
Yeah, I wrote this book. I definitely wanted them to learn about birds, but I also, as a parent, I read books to kids, and I know that other, kids, little kids don't read the books by themselves. They read them with their parents, and I noticed that as a parent, reading books with my kids, that I liked reading books where I could learn something. So I actually think that there are a lot of parents who maybe don't know what a yellow warbler looks like, and they might enjoy the book for that reason. It's a way for them to learn.
Do you like, was it hard for you to first get started, like you were saying about having like rejections from publishers and stuff like that? Did you find that hard to keep going after, or did you just really want to write and you knew that you were a good writer, you just needed to find the right publisher?
Well, I had a very easy time publishing this book. I can't say that it was difficult. It was very smooth sailing, to be honest. But just in general, like I started writing when I was young, and then maybe I was in my 20s when I started sending out work. And I don't mean books. I mean more like short stories or something of that nature. And you don't always get a yes when you send things out. Sorry, what was your question again? I've lost the thread here.
Like, was it hard to keep going like through when you had like rejections and stuff like that?
Not really, not for me. I am quite a stubborn person, and I was aware from reading interviews with writers that basically that's just par for the course, that's just part of being a writer. I'm just stubborn. I really recommend being stubborn.
What book did you think, like writing yourself, did you enjoy writing the most? Like you had the most fun, you were just creative with it, and yeah.
That's a good question. I enjoy every project that I do. I get so immersed in whatever it is that I'm writing. I can spend so long on a single sentence that I can't say I really have a favorite project per se. It's the project I'm working on right now. That's always the project I like the best, the one I'm doing at the moment.
So I think any fans of your reading are like wanting to know, do you have any plans for moving forward in the future of like more books that you want to publish, or like just anything that you can say like about maybe writing more books? And yeah.
Yeah, I want to write a lot of books. I am working on a novel for grown-ups. It's a book of magical realism. Do you know magical realism? Yeah, and it's set in Halifax, so that's kind of fun for me since that's where I live. And I am polishing up a book about a family that buys a lemon. A lemon is a word for a bad car, but they actually buy a lemon, like a piece of fruit. And the lemon is great. Actually, it hugs the road, and they can make lemonade out of it. They just have to give it a little squeeze, and yeah, it was a fun book to write.
Do you think, like, with your opinion, do you think it's easier to write nonfiction books or fiction books?
Wow. Well, I think it depends, because a fiction book, you don't have to make things up, but you have to do a lot of research. So if you're doing fiction, you have to really use a lot of creative muscle to come up with a plot, and that's actually quite a lot of work. But it's also a lot of work to do research. So it's kind of half a dozen of one, six of another.
When you were writing your fiction book, did you find that like you were set with one thing, or did you kind of just like go wherever your pen took you kind of and just like write along with the story, or did you know from the start you wanted to do a particular a story about the particular thing?
The fiction book?
Yeah.
You mean the one for kids or the one for
Yeah,
grown-ups?
the one for kids.
Well, I had the idea for the story about the lemon all at once. I was out for lunch, and we were eating Greek food, and I think there was a lemon on the table, and just all at once the story just came to me, and I came home and I just started writing.
Yeah, it's crazy how those ideas can kind of just come to your head, and then like what you make out of them, kind of.
Yeah, like sometimes it can be more painful than that, in the sense that you have to intentionally think, like, okay, so I have this little German of an idea, what will happen next? And sometimes you have to, really intentionally try to like brainstorm ideas, and then sometimes it just comes really easily.
So, for like all of your books that you wrote, have you experienced any problems, not just with publishers, but like finding people that want to illustrate, or has it just like have people actually offered to like illustrate them, or have you had to reach out and like try like again and again?
Well, in the case of my first book of Canadian Birds, when I went to the NIMH office to sign the contract, my editor there showed me the work of a few illustrators. And it was funny because I had an image in my mind of what the art would look like for that book. And it was kind of cartoony, and it was totally different from the art that ended up being in the book. But as soon as the editor showed me the work of Angela Doak, I fell absolutely in love with it. And so they asked Angela if she would do it, and she was really happy to, because unbeknownst to the editor at Nimbus, Angela's favorite thing to create is birds. So that worked out really well. And then in the case of The Day the Buddha Woke Up, that was illustrated by Rima Fujita. And years before I wrote that book, I came across her artwork because I was writing an article for a magazine, and I saw her work, and I thought, if I ever write a Buddhist children's book, I want her to do the art. I would be so happy if that were to happen. And then I ended up writing The Day the Buddha Woke Up. So I had her in my mind, and I had developed a relationship with her because I ended up writing an article about her for the magazine. So after I wrote the book, I asked her if she wanted to do the art, and she said yes.
So when you basically, like you said, you started writing in like grade 3, I think it was. Did you like before that, were you always interested in reading books, or did you like art, for example, or was it always just writing and reading from the start, or was it just that kind of just happened in like grade 3 after seeing like loving birds, loving writing, and loving reading?
Reading and writing have always been my things. When I was 4, my mother used to take me to the supermarket, and there used to be these little books for kids. They were golden books. They had gold spines, and they're not super expensive. So she would say to me, "Do you want to have a chocolate bar, or do you want to have a book?" That would be my treat when we would go to the supermarket, and I would always choose a book. And then, as I got older, I started school. I remember I was the kid who would walk and read at the same time. So it's always been words for me.
So I like I said, while I was reading this book, I agree with you too. The artwork looks really nice, and although it might be different, that you kind of have to roll with it. But has there been any challenges or setbacks that you've had to overcome, and how did you overcome it?
You mean setbacks in terms of writing?
Yeah, like I don't know if maybe one of your books like maybe failed to send, and then I don't know, just like any like thing that might have been a challenge for you in terms of writing and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, different challenges come up. Like sometimes, I work at a magazine where I write articles very regularly for the magazine. And recently I wrote a piece, and I had, speaking of research, when you do nonfiction, it was a nonfiction article, and I had a limit of how many words I could put in the article, but I had done a lot of research, and it was a really complicated topic, and with all sorts of fascinating elements, and I struggled to figure out how to trim it all down. Sometimes I feel like when I'm writing a piece, I feel like I'm wrestling with a dragon, and I'm trying to like pin all the different limbs and the tail of this dragon down. So that's always, writing. I love writing. Writing can be the most exhilarating thing when I'm really in the zone, but it can also be really challenging too. It's kind of a mixed bag.
Did you know anything, or like did you have like any say relatives or anything that did writing before that kind of guided you or helped you, or was it just basically your teachers and yeah?
I don't have any relatives who are professional writers. I have some relatives who enjoy writing, and I looked up to them, and that inspired me to want to write too. I had a teacher when I was in grade 7. It's actually Sylvia Gunnery. You may have heard of Sylvia Gunnery. She's a Nova Scotian writer. She writes books for middle school maybe, and she was my teacher in grade 7. So she was the first person I ever met who was a professional writer, and that was great. I actually ended up reconnecting with her a couple of years ago. It was great to see her.
So do you like you said you love like reading your books and to like your kids and stuff. Have you ever done like a public reading to just anybody that wants to come in? Like especially now like over Zoom, like, and did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I read my first book of Canadian birds over Zoom. Was it Zoom? YouTube or Zoom? I can't quite remember the format it took, but it was for the Discovery Center, and I read a little bit for Pottersfield Press from my book, Awakening My Heart. So those have been, I guess, the two readings that I've done over in this medium. I do podcasts also, reading some of my work for Lion's Roar. That's the magazine I work for. I've done some podcasts as well.
So about mentioning like about you writing magazines and stuff, do you find it easier to write nonfiction books or like nonfiction like magazines, like just in the because book you can have unlimited space depending on what audience, and magazine you only have a limited space.
Right. Well, I've only written 3 nonfiction books, and only written 3 books really that have been published. The nonfiction books, I've the 2 children's books, so those are very short. And then the nonfiction book for grown-ups, Awakening My Heart, is actually all material besides the introduction I wrote for the magazine. So I have yet to have the experience of writing a full-length book, like an adult book, that's nonfiction. Hopefully someday I'll get to do that. I don't know what it will be about, but I hope someday to do that.
Do you have like a spot in your house, or even if you have an office, that you can just like go and write, and like that's kind of just your writing space, or is it just wherever you feel like it?
No, I have an office slash like bedroom area. So I have my desk and my bed. They're right beside each other. I have a little bookshelf. It's it's a pretty comfortable space for me. I think it's really. I can't write very well with other people in the room. That is really, really hard for me. So
did you find growing up, like whenever you were in your free time, you would write about something you enjoyed, or whenever you were writing, I guess you write about something you enjoyed, or did you kind of just write like anything that came to mind and like just tried to make a story out of it?
Well, so sorry, can you say that again? What?
Like when you were writing, did you write things that you enjoyed, or things that you like just came to mind and you made a story out of it?
Like what inspired me when I was a kid?
Yeah.
One thing that I was really interested in when I was a kid, I started, I learned about it at first in school, and it just really captured my imagination, was mythology. So that was a definite source of inspiration for me. And also, I've always been very interested in nature, and that was another thread that would show up in my writing when I was a kid too. I remember one of my favorite poems that I wrote when I was a kid. I wrote a poem about picking berries. It was about picking blackberries and raspberries. I loved picking berries when I was a kid, and when you're outside and the sun hits the berries and they look like these beautiful black jewels. Yeah. Anyway, that was so nature and mythology, I would say, were some of my inspirations.
So do you think like even now you still use those same inspirations and just like write your books off of them, or now do you find you can write a bit more freely about any topic?
Well, so I don't think this quite answers your question, but I found the question very interesting because it made me think that actually I still have some of the same inspiration. Like I really like old classic stories, like whether they come from the Bible or from Buddhist legends and folklore or myth. I'm very interested in all of those things, and those things still are informing my writing. And also nature. I mean, my first book of Canadian birds, that's nature right there. And I love writing about animals. I've written about animals in a bunch of different ways.
Do you feel like while your kids get older, you kind of want to inspire them to write, or do you feel like if you'll just like help them if they want to write, or do you think that's something that you'll want to at least get them to do?
I think I want my kids to do whatever it is that interests them, but I definitely am sharing my passion for reading with them. My kids have a lot of books, and we read together every single day. Um, my mother read to me until I was really, I think it was probably in grade 6 when my mother stopped reading books to me, which is, a lot of parents stop reading to their kids, I think, a lot earlier than that. But it was something that we really enjoyed doing together. And I imagine I'll do that also with my kids, and basically until they say stop.
So, did you ever have growing up or even now like a group of friends that you go out and then you just all write together like a writers group and go out and just drink coffee or something, or do you just like basically write by yourself?
um, I have in the past gone out with a friend to write and drink coffee. Actually, the same friend that I used to write depressing poetry with when I was in grade 5 about shipwrecks. Um, Same friend, we're still friends. So I've gone out to write with her, but not a lot. And but nowadays, I actually have a writing group. I'm friends with 3 women in California, and I meet up with them every few weeks, and we talk about. We don't write together, but we look at each other's writing and we critique it, and it's really fun. I really like that group.
Do
I
you
also did. Oh, sorry.
what?
I also did a degree in writing. I did my master's degree in creative writing, so I got a lot of chance to talk with other writers at that time about their writing. It was fun.
Do you find you like editing your own work and then just going over it a lot, or do you find you like sending it to like editors? Like, I know you have to at least once to get it published, kind of, but do you like reading over it and trying to fix all the mistakes first, or do you just like look over it once or twice and don't see anything and then send it off to an editor?
I know I like to go through my work a number of times to get it to a point that I'm happy with it before I send it to an editor.
Did you ever find that like hard, like you're excited to get the book out and like but you know you want to have it like a certain level of standard that you want before you send it off? Did you ever find that hard to like go over the same thing over and over and over and like just catch like one or two mistakes like every little bit? Did you find that challenging for you, or did you kind of just like brush it off and know that that happens?
Yeah, I mean, it can be frustrating. I think, and it's important to give some space between when you write a book and then when you go back to look at it and see if there's something that you want to change. I mean, usually these changes, a lot of people think about editing in terms of just like, I'm gonna fix just a comma or something. But usually editing is kind of a lot more involved than that. Sometimes it's rearranging, trimming, adding things. Yeah. So I think that it's good to put some space between writing and then going back to edit something.
So thank you for your time, and yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.